Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Nanto, and some apologies. I was going to have as my guest on the show this week, and I've talked about it on last week's show, Pierre-Jean Chalon, who runs our Asia Pac business and is a great guy, but he had some last-minute commitments that he wasn't able to make, so we're going to have him back on in a couple of weeks. But in grabbing and reaching for emergency substitute guests, I didn't have to reach very far. I'm joined by my good friend, Tom Arbuthnot. Tom, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Happy to be the last minute emergency guest. Always fun to come on the show. Thanks for that. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't know Tom Arbuthnot, I run a company called Empowering Cloud, which is all about teams training and advisory. And I work with various customers and partners. It's all teams, so teams for me.
Yes, and that was actually one of the reasons that I reached out to you, because we got a lot of events coming up, both in the U.S. and in the U.K. and EMEA, that you're going to be part of. We're paying attention to. I think a couple of them overlap. So let's actually. Well, before we do all of that, I do want to take a minute. I know you just talked about Empowering Cloud. I know it's a new enterprise for you. Take a little bit more time. Give me another minute or two. Tell everybody, what your typical a day is like, who your clients are, what you're doing. Give everybody a sense of what you do in the industry now, other than just being the Teams and Microsoft expert.
Yeah, other than being on social all the time. So I previously worked for a Microsoft partner for many years doing Teams in large enterprise. And I realized that there's a real gap in knowledge, both for customers and partners. That the cloud stuff is moving so fast, and there's so many changes. So that there needed to be a new way to kind of inform, educate people. And that was the beginning of Empowering Cloud. So we do two things. We have a community, and it's all video-based briefings and updates. So I do monthly updates. We do feature briefings. We have other subject matter experts come in and do briefings. They're all under 15 minutes, and it's all free to access. So we just topped over 1,000 people that come and sign up and are engaged. So really excited about that and getting
awesome.
Really good feedback. Yeah, really pleased. And we just refreshed the website as well. So we've got kind of mobile-friendly interface now. So that's one element, and that's 100% free, and it's sponsor back. We have some really great sponsors supporting us on that, which enables us to do it for free access. And then I work with a number of Microsoft partners as well who want that next level of engagement. So they either want more one-to-one time, they want custom learning paths, they want training specific to their niche, their salespeople, their pre-sales. So that's the two kind of two parts of it. One is completely free to access content up to date from subject matter experts on Teams. You can come and get that now at empowering.cloud. Just sign in with LinkedIn and you're away. And then if you're in the partner space, you need that next level of advice on how to get your Microsoft certifications and exams and helping customers, then that's the kind of premium option.
So speaking as somebody who's been in this industry for 4 decades and wears a lot of hats as well, you're kind of in that multiple hat mode again, aren't you? You're part consultant, you're part analyst, you're part trainer. You're sort of filling a lot of pieces that do fit together in your mind and in my mind very well, but in the customer's mind, it sometimes comes in different buckets.
Yeah, totally. And it's hard to pitch in a short way what I'm doing, because you're exactly right. Like I do stuff, I worked hands-on with customers for a long time, but then I became advisory to those customers. I haven't done hands-on config for years and years, but I do strategic guidance. So that kind of fits the analyst. I obviously spend a lot of time in the industry talking to my peers, seeing what competitors are doing. The Microsoft Teams ecosystem is massive, so I spend a lot of time talking to the ecosystem vendors. So that's kind of the analyst advisor hat on. And then I do what you would call training videos in a classic sense. What I like to think is those things are so intertwined now. You can't really do training without knowing what's going on in the industry, and you can't really advise people unless you're talking to all the ecosystem vendors. So it kind of, in my head, they all tie together. But yeah, it's busy. There's a lot of hats.
Yeah, and the agile nature of software and platforms that we're dealing with right now, it's certainly an advantage in some ways where, even from a poly standpoint, we're sending you out equipment, and then every time we get an update, it does something even better and even more cool. But it is a difficult thing, especially around an adoption and around an understanding piece, specifically around Microsoft Teams. One example, I don't know if I ever spoke to you about this one, is like, I have a number of project teams in my Teams application, and one of them, the tab is a spreadsheet. And then I woke up one morning and there's a column to the right of the spreadsheet that I can't get rid of anymore. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I don't know what the feature ad was, but the things change, and sometimes they change faster than people want them to.
That they do change at a real pace, and like even when we're in the industry, and this is my full-time job, and it's more than a full-time job trying to keep up. Then you think of partners who have to keep up because they're advising customers, but end customers are struggling as well. The bigger enterprises have teams. I work with a very, very large enterprise, multiple hundreds of thousands. They have a product manager for each sub feature of teams to keep up in their world. So as you scale down to those smaller customers, and by small I still mean thousands of users, but not hundreds, like keeping up is a real challenge. And that's the challenge we're taking on, is trying to help people keep up.
And about a week ago, we learned that Zoom's chat, they're now rephrasing, they're going to be naming it Zoom Team Chat. So if you're using a team chat platform, you're either using Slack or you're using Teams, or Team.
Yeah. I think if you can't beat them on the branding, join them. Right, we're all
Yeah.
Teams collaboration
So
platforms
I'm waiting for the Slack folks to change their name to Teams, and then it will be Teams, or Teams.
Yeah,
But we work at an interesting career in an interesting space, and it's good to have advisors like you around in it. So I certainly appreciate that. Although I will chat with
thanks.
you offline to see if I can get rid of that column to the right of my
Yeah.
spreadsheet,
It
because it
sounds like I need to give you some support there.
drives me crazy. All right, so back to what we were talking about before, the events that are coming up in the industry. There are two really big ones. One that you're presenting at happens in the UK every year, UC Expo. I think it's run by the Clarion team. I'm not sure. I think that's the name of the group that does it. But
Yeah,
tell us
that's
about what it
right.
is, and what you've done there in the past and what you're doing there this year.
Yeah, it's been a show that's been going for many, many years in the UK, in London, UC Expo, and it's that they've kind of brought another one of their brands, the Digital Transformation Expo, into that one show. It's a multi-thousand user big show at a place called Excel in London, and it pulls in people from all over Europe, really. And in recent years, it's just been getting busier and busier in the Microsoft space, because it's one of the big topics of our industry. But it is a multi-vendor event. It's a UC show, not just a Microsoft show. For me personally, there's a Microsoft stage, so I'm heavily involved in that. I work quite closely with the organisers, great team. And we're doing one of the things I'm doing is a Microsoft panel, which is Microsoft Teams Success at Scale. I'm really excited about this one because I've got some really kind of top drawer customers that I work with and know. So we've got Simon Leyland from Pearson, who's obviously a massive company, Karen Wild from Burberry, and Evan Gordon from EY. So some enterprises that I know have had a lot of hands-on experience with deploying teams at real scale. And we're going to kind of drill in. And then we've got Joe Johnson, who's a customer success manager from Microsoft, to bring us the kind of Microsoft perspective as well.
Yeah, Microsoft has done some really amazing research over the last couple of months around pandemic and hybrid working and return to office, and it's really interesting to see how their research really locks in to what's been going on in the space. That what they've come up with really affirms what we've been talking about for the longest time, which is there is no real return to the office if you haven't made changes to the office or the way you're doing business. You've got to earn that commute. You've got to make the changes to adapt to the way we're going to be working going forward.
Yeah, you're right, and that research is worth reading. It's not your typical kind of marketing research. These are surveys of thousands of customers, and they've put some real time and money into the research and some good brains behind it. And yeah, you're right. It's a lot of how managers have to deal with the change and how you can work with your team in a new hybrid way. And 100% what you said is, like, whatever you think, we're not going back to the way things were. Then the hybrid, which is a totally overused term, is here to stay. And how do we make the most of it?
Yeah, and it's interesting, workers that are employees, knowledge workers that have a difficult time adapting to the new tools can sort of kind of get by if they're skilled at what they do. Managers can't. The thing that we've learned is in this connected world where meetings no longer take place in only rooms, they take place in the cloud and rooms connect to them. Managers need to be more skilled than they were before. You can't just take a good performer and say, oh, you've been doing really well now, I'm promoting you to manager, manage the team, because the skills to be a good performer, a good contributor, and a good manager are completely different now.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's funny, I lived that. So I was a consultant before I managed a consulting team of 14 people, and I think I was a great consultant and not a great manager. Like, I was great if people kind of got it and were in the mix. But that made me appreciate it's a full-time skill, and I'm definitely an individual contributor more than I'm a big team people manager. But I think you're right. It's a special skill set.
Yeah, I go the other way around. I spent the majority of my career, certainly in the financial services space, around collaboration as a manager of teams between 50 and 100 people globally, and I thought I did a really good job at that. And most of my employees are still good friends, and I'm hopefully that if you speak to them, they'll vouch for it. But now here at Poly, I'm an individual contributor, and I love not having to fill out the forms and do the reviews and
Yeah,
all the rest of it. It's a lot
the
easier.
working with motivated people and mentoring them and training them, and that bit's fantastic. But like you say, it's the admin and the sick leave and the hiring and all that stuff is it's a special skill. But I mean, looking after people as well, it's a that all that EQ element to it is even more important in hybrid.
Yes.
And going back to your point, like I think a lot of managers that were probably very good managers in the same physical space as their team might not naturally be the same skill remotely, and having to learn that one of the obvious things is putting in time to talk to people that isn't around a particular topic. That water cooler time that you would have had naturally in person, you have to somehow recreate that.
We have to, and your organization should as well. And a number of the other trainers and adoption people that I know in the industry, like Kevin Keeler or Blair Pleasant or any of the other people that do this, really have to put in the time teaching managers, supervisors, what the skills they need, how to work with the technology to still be that one-on-one and that important contact for their people. It's definitely a skill that we're going to all have to do a better job training on as we go forward. And you're right, it's not really hybrid working anymore. It's just working. That's the way we're
Yes,
going to do it going forward.
yeah,
So,
for
so the,
sure.
the panel you mentioned is actually one of the better parts of going to one of these events because you're not just hearing from the sponsors. Thank God the sponsors are there because without their money there wouldn't be a show. But when you want to hear from fellow users, you want to hear the mistakes they've made and the successes they've had, so you can repeat their successes and not repeat their mistakes.
That's it, and that's why I like UCX so far. The last few years, they've been pushing really hard to get the ratio of customers up and the ratio of analysts and people like me, more balanced, because you just don't want to hear from consultants and vendors all day. Although, like you say, they've got their part to play for sure. And along those lines, the afternoon we've got a Microsoft Teams Ask Us Anything session with a couple of Microsoft presenters and a couple of community members, and we're just doing an hour with drinks and snacks and literally a fairly open floor of Ask Us Anything. And again, that's the kind of thing coming to an event in person. I think is really, really good because the floor is open for an hour and we'll have a load more experts in the room because I know who's coming. Like, just fire your questions out and let's have a big chat about how we can answer them.
So if you're in EMEA, and definitely if you're in the UK, you should definitely travel in to see Tom and the rest of the great exhibitors, including Polly. I'm sure we're there. My colleague Sanal is probably running that operation, and see us at UC Expo. What are the dates again?
Yeah, so it's the 12th and 13th of October, so Wednesday and Thursday.
But I would postulate that there aren't going to be as many Microsoft people there as there have been in the past because that seems to coincide with another pretty big Microsoft event that's going on. Correct?
It does indeed, yeah. So this was a late breaking announcement, but Microsoft Ignite, which is the customer facing big conference for Microsoft. So this is the one where they announce all their features and what's going on in their world. That is happening the 12th, 13th, and 14th of October. It's hybrid, so they're doing about 3,000 people in Seattle. They're doing some spot locations around the world where they're doing kind of watch parties and local events. But also you can sign up free online and get to all the content online as well.
Yeah, so we will be speaking to Duncan Barnes and Natalia Herrera on our Alliances and Microsoft team, respectively, in a couple of weeks to give you a preview of what to expect from the Poly side at Ignite this year. We're going to be obviously doing quite a bit of online work since it is a hybrid event. Kudos to Microsoft for being one of the few entities that hasn't forgotten about the virtual element just because the pandemic is waning. We wanted to make sure that we keep that door open for the disabled and the homebound, and they've done a nice job. And there'll also be a limited, but real in-person event going on, I believe, in the Seattle area,
Yes.
and it's going to kind of be both. So I've seen the Poly announcements. I'd be fired if I
I was going to say, I
mention.
was going to ask, David.
Yeah, no, I can't talk about that just yet. But if you've been following Poly at all over the last couple of years with Microsoft Teams and MTR, and we go way back, to Link and Skype for Business and all the rest of it. It's we've been the partner with the biggest breadth of solutions for Microsoft since there were any. So
Oh, and
I'm very
even broader with the acquisition as well now.
Yes, yes, we are very happy to be part of a company, part of HP, but we're kind of avoiding that conversation here until that deal integrates, which is taking place right now. So something that we're very proud of and happy that we've gotten through, but waiting for the big November 1st conversations on that. But getting back to the announcements, it's like wow. I can't, I really would like to talk about it, but I can't.
Yeah.
So I can't really show you my cards. Maybe you can show me yours. What kind of things do you think
Yeah,
are
yeah.
are coming
I
out
think
of the show?
I think I'm under a lot of the same NDAs you are on the Microsoft
Ah,
side. So there's
okay.
not actually. It's interesting. What we can talk about is there's a lot going on in Teams, right? Surprise, surprise. Teams is always busy, but there's a lot going on. But also we've had the public announcements of the Basic and Pro Microsoft Teams Room licensing. I think this show is going to flesh out a lot of what's going on with the Pro and what's going on with Microsoft Teams Rooms. So if you're in the devices space, the phones room, the intelligent meeting space, there's going to be some really interesting sessions to watch out for. And then just Microsoft Teams in general, there's always a lot going on in Microsoft Teams. It's such a busy product in terms of development and change to be talked about. So I know there's a couple sessions coming out that will give us an overview. And if you've been following, Microsoft Viva is a really hot topic as well, that whole digital experience for employees and that integrating to Teams. So there'll be a lot of Viva information as well.
I haven't heard as much about Front Row since it was announced. Obviously, there have been some very exciting demos and some organizations that are starting to try and play with it, but it hasn't been as loud in terms of the chatter. Am I missing something, or is
Yeah,
that
no,
fair?
I think you're right. Like it's interesting. It makes for a good demo or like an experience center kind of demo when you see it live, and it looks very impressive. But in terms of day-to-day uptake, I think it's still relatively niche. It also takes a long time for organizations to deploy. If they're going for the full 21 by 9 screen, stuff like that, it takes a while for the kit to cycle, I think. There's a lot going on in the meeting space around not just fancy layouts, but things like the intelligent camera and the digital framing and all that kind of stuff, and the AI technology. I think that's really interesting. The AI doesn't get nearly enough press to my mind. Things like all the audio improvements that are being done computationally as well, I think are pretty amazing. So there's a lot going on beyond just changing layouts, although that is a big one.
Yeah, and I think this is fair. I'm not being unfair to any platform. A lot of the platforms have been talking about next generation experiences, active cameras, multiple views, smart intelligent camera switching, and the technology is just not there yet. It's close. It's doing some of what's there, but we are probably still a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years away from this idea that we would have a camera array in rooms that's cost effective and doesn't look stupid and is not working with mechanical cameras, to be able to kind of pick up any person anywhere, good shot, and then be able to transmit all of them down the pipeline for a platform. I think that we can sort of draw that on paper and we can envision it, but I think we're still waiting for a little bit of technology catch up there.
Yeah, I'd agree. We're on a journey, and we're at the kind of V1, V2 stage. Things like the smart speakers as well. You can see where that's going. The naming convention, like so, whereby, sorry for those that aren't following, the smart speakers are actually smart mics that you can sit into a room, you can voice enroll, and it will know who's speaking. So the remote attendee can see your name, and that you're active. That kind of stuff. It's early for that, but you can see where we're going. Like that will become the norm over time, and we'll wonder how we did without it, I think.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of I don't know if I've spoken to you about this before, but certainly spoken about it on this show. The creepy factor that we can technically do more than people are really ready to accept. I know of one large enterprise, global enterprise, that's actually in some litigation with their employees about biometrics at all. And not just facial recognition or voice recognition, but the fact that it just notices that there's a person in the room that they're objecting to. So a lot of
Yeah,
these
and
things have to be worked out in our social condition.
you're right, and that really holds back the tech in enterprise. So a lot of the things Microsoft could do with the Cortana technology is all off by default. You have to manually opt in to enroll, etc., etc. Whereas in consumer world, like the consumer brands will just turn that stuff on and it's away. So you see a lot happening first in consumer because there's less of that worry about, and with enterprises, especially if they're multinational, multi-geo, just working out what's allowed and what's not in each region can be enough to be like, actually, if we turn it off, we're safe, which stifles the innovation somewhat, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting cultural shift, not just a technology shift. So tell me about Tom Arbuthnot's life that week. You're going to be traveling down to EXO to do the show live, and then when you get home at 3, 4, 5 in the morning, you're going to be looking at what was happened on Ignite that day real quick and zooming through it
Yeah,
fast.
yeah, it's going to be a crazy week. So yeah, I've got various sessions at UCX, so that's 2 days. There's a day in between, but actually I'm doing another show on the Saturday. There's a show called South Coast Summit in the UK. So it's going to be a real back-to-back week, and as you say, it'll be probably presenting in the day, catching up on the news in the evening, hopefully over a beer or something, and then probably on the Ask Us Anything, there'll be a lot of questions about the content as well. So yeah, it's going to be all go.
It's crazy being busy, but what I've learned over the years in my career is it's better to be busy than not busy.
Yeah, yeah, and I just love our space and what's going on. It's exciting. There's so much going on, so you can't complain when there's a week of events and news. It's all good fun.
So I appreciate you being the pinch hitter for PJ on this week, and I hope you'll come back on as we get a little bit clear of these shows and you're able to digest it and help us understand what the news was, and maybe I'll have you on with a couple of our Microsoft experts like Joe and Brandon, and we can kind of talk about what our announcements were and what the next generation is going to be, and where we think we're taking it with Microsoft Teams and collaboration in general.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah, maybe we do an Ignite debrief or something like that, and catch up. And yeah, getting your team when you've got some really awesome SMEs in the poly team. So it'd be nice to back and forth with them and what they think.
Tom, as always, I appreciate it. Now, can I find out information about where you're presenting and everything else you do on your website, or do I have
Yeah,
to reach out to you directly?
yeah, no. The speaking events are all on tomtalks.blog, and everything goes up on LinkedIn as well. That's my most active platform. So if you're interested in teams or what I'm up to, LinkedIn, Tom Arbuthnot, you can find me there.
Okay, and I certainly advise any of our clients and partners if you do need help, if you do need advice and expertise in the Microsoft Teams space, Tom's the guy. So definitely reach out to him. LinkedIn, on his website, Empowering Cloud. Good guy, good friend of Polly's, and we'll reach out to you again as soon as we're clear of these shows, so we can hear about all the amazing announcements and kind of giggle and talk
Yeah, we
about
can get
them
into all the
together.
NDA stuff next time.
Exactly. So that's it for Poly Weekly News this week. Tom, thank you for joining us. My guest next week is going to be David Maldo from Let's Do Video, and we're going to be talking about kind of what Tom and I mentioned earlier here, which is the idea that what's happened to virtual events now that we're all starting to meet back in person. And I think it's a great topic, and David will and I will chat about what's great, what's bad, what companies should be doing, and generally the space of virtual events in general. But for this week, that's it for Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto. For all of my colleagues at Poly, thank you very much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you next week.